This is Special Prosecutor Larry Klayman.
I'm the only lawyer ever to obtain a court ruling that a president of the United States committed a crime.
For truth, for competition.
As a young lawyer, I helped break up AT&T. That's why you have all your cell phones today.
For sovereignty, for the Republic.
I'm the guy who at Judicial Watch, which I founded, uncovered the Chinagate scandal. Millions of dollars going to the Clinton campaign, corrupting our political system.
For the privacy of citizens.
And I'm the only guy to have enjoined the National Security Agency from mass surveillance on hundreds of millions of Americans.
Tearing it up.
I'm the son of meat packers in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. I know how to slice and dice.
Bringing it back.
We're going to take this country apart and put it back together again in the way envisioned by our founding fathers.
It's not just talk.
We're not just regurgitating news stories. Larry Klayman, special prosecutor, is making the news.
And now, here's Larry.
Welcome to this week's edition of Special Prosecutor with Larry Klayman. Later in the show, we're going to have Laura Loomer on, a very courageous American patriot. She's running for Congress in Palm Beach County, Florida. She's taken on Ilham Omar, Rashida Tlaib. She was assaulted by Rashida Tlaib at an event with Omar a few years ago. We brought a lawsuit on her behalf. And she's had a number of cases in the courts down there in South Florida, two of which landed in front of recent Trump appointees, Judge Roy Altman and Rodney Smith, and the experience was not exactly favorable. These judges, frankly, behaved in a dishonest and unethical way, and they need to be held to account. And I raise that because just yesterday, Thursday rather, the Supreme Court, with a majority opinion by Chief Justice John Roberts, who has proved to be less than reliable in past experiences. He's the one who gave us Obamacare. He flipped at the 12th hour, a lot of other decisions. He's moving left. You have to wonder what the deep state intelligence agencies have on him to turn him into a leftist, but that's what he is at this point. He issued a majority opinion which shot down the president's attempt to pull back on DACA. That's where the dreamers get to stay in this country. This was Obama's executive order where he effectively gave amnesty to 5 million illegal aliens. And Roberts nullifies Trump's attempt to eliminate that. And of course, we had already eliminated it in the lower courts, but now it's back there rearing its ugly head again. Now, in response to Roberts' ruling, the president boasted that he needs to be reelected because he will appoint truly conservative Supreme Court justices. Now, Roberts was appointed by George H.W. Bush, the dad. No surprise that he turned out to be as bad as he actually is. And this is some guy who years ago said that Supreme Court justices aren't accountable to the Judicial Code of Conduct because they're confirmed by the U.S. Senate and that they're investigated and that therefore their ethics are beyond reproach. So in effect, they can do whatever they want. They're above the law. That, of course, is the problem. And it was our great founding father, Thomas Jefferson, who warned against this. He did not want federal judges. When he was sent a copy of the Constitution when he was our ambassador to Paris, to France, after the Revolutionary War, he commented that should be stricken from the Constitution because federal judges and justices of the Supreme Court are not elected by the people. They're unaccountable. And he predicted they would become despots. They would become little dictators. And ultimately, things would become so bad that we would again have to spill the blood of patriots. And he said, what's a few thousand dead every now and then to preserve liberty? Now, I don't want to see anybody hurt. I'm not advocating that. I'm just saying what Jefferson said. And here was our greatest founding father and third American president. He saw the problem. He also saw the fact that these judges would claim to have lifetime tenure. Well, they don't have lifetime tenure. There's nothing in the Constitution that gives them a lifetime appointment. It just says they shall serve for good behavior, which means that they can be removed for bad behavior. And they should be. You know how many judges that we have impeached in our 240 some years as a republic? 8, only 8. You know how many thousands have been appointed? So this tells you that there's no accountability. Congress will not take them on, will not hold them accountable. And they're running roughshod, not just over our Constitution, but our laws in general. So Trump comes back and says, okay, vote for me because I'm going to appoint, and I'll give you a list before you even vote, of the judges that I'll nominate to the Supreme Court if I'm reelected. Well, look who he's nominated already. Neil Gorsuch, who just this week as well legitimized LGBTQ sexual status. In other words, you can be transgender right now and you're a third sex, okay? I mean, this is in outer space, okay? There's nothing in the Constitution, doesn't mean that gay people and LGBTQ shouldn't be given equal rights, but there's nothing in the Constitution that gives them that. They should be treated that way, of course. But this is an outrageous decision. He sided with the left in that regard. And then, of course, you have Justice Kavanaugh. And Kavanaugh has gone left as well because he's so afraid of his shadow right now that he's going to be impeached by the rabid Democrats for anything that might happen, that now he has turned left. Now, if these are the great justices, I should say, that Trump has given us, God help us. But the judges on the lower courts are even worse. And I've come upon at least 7 of them, not just Roy Altman, not just Rodney Smith, and Laura Loomer is going to talk about that, but Judge Karen Gren Scholler in the Northern District of Texas, who dismissed a case, if you can believe this, by the father of a fallen police officer, Patrick Zamarripa, who was killed by a disciple of Louis Farrakhan, a wrongful death case. She said, well, you didn't really allege sufficiently that it was Farrakhan's disciple and it was tied to him. Well, read my column this week in WorldNet Daily. You can see it at freedomwatchusa.org or WND.com, because in fact, Farrakhan, just hours before that massacre was calling for the death of white cops in particular. Now, Patrick was Latino. He's white, of course. Latinos are white. So he falls in that category. And this is something that Farrakhan needs to be held accountable for because he was calling for their death. And so was Sharpton, so was Black Lives Matter, so was the new Black Panthers Party. They were all sued. And Gren Scholler didn't have the guts to have this case go forward. A year or so before that, a Clinton appointee by the name of Sam Lindsay in the same court, Northern District of Texas, dismissed a case by Demetric Penny, who also had sued because he had been assaulted in that massacre. And, you know, these judges, and it shows you that the Trump judge and the Clinton judge, no different, flip sides of the same coin, afraid of their shadow, afraid to take on these kinds of matters in their courtroom. And of course, there's Judge Timothy Kelly in the District of Columbia, Judge Trevor McFadden, we're going to talk about that with Laura, and Judge Dabney Friedrich, who dismissed a case by Laura Loon against Fox News and Suzanne Scott over defaming her. She was the primary victim of Roger Ailes. They don't want anything controversial in their courtroom. They particularly don't want anything controversial by someone like Laura Loomer or Laurie Loon or others, because they want to be part of this club. And they got there, these judges, by basically sucking up to the powers to be with large campaign contributions given by special interests, either large law firms or labor unions or corporations. We do not get the best and the brightest on the federal bench. Now, in state court, you know, the judges are accountable. State court judges are much better. In fact, the judges in Florida in state court are pretty good. I've been in front of a lot of them lately, and they're fair people. They listen to you. They have respect for the lawyers in front of them. They don't think they're God. And they let you go to discovery. And if you can prove your case beyond that, at summary judgment, you can go to trial. But the federal judges are, by and large, very, very much politicized, and they're very much compromised. And this is exactly what Jefferson predicted. So President Trump, you know, if you lay out a list of people who you think should be on the Supreme Court, do not go to the Federalist Society, which is a lukewarm so-called conservative lobbying group in the hip pocket of the Republican establishment, and do not go to others like Don McGahn, your former White House counsel, also establishment, because they want their people on the bench. These lawyers appear in front of these judges. In fact, if you look at the former firm of Robert Mueller, I think he's actually back there again, probably doing nothing, and he's being probably paid a lot. And Jeannie Rhee, she was from there as well. This large law firm has gotten both Democrat and Republican judges from its law firm on the bench. And this is the problem, because they want their people on there, because this is how they sell it to their clients. We own the federal bench in Washington, D.C., in effect. So I want to raise that with people, because you don't really understand that the president sometimes is well-intentioned. In fact, most times he's well-intentioned, but he's poorly served. And he needs to pay attention, better attention to what's going on, because the judges that he's put on the bench, by and large, are absolutely terrible, and they are afraid of their shadow. I call them Puxatani Phil, and his attorney general, who's Puxatani Bill Barr, is afraid of his shadow as well and refuses to hold anyone accountable, whether it's James Comey or Andrew McCabe or the Lovebirds, Strzok and Page, or the Obamas or the Clintons. In fact, he's exonerated both Biden and Obama from any wrongdoing before there's even a thorough investigation of what we now know about Fusion GPS and the Steele dossier, the Ukrainian bribery scandal. This is the Washington establishment is corrupt to the core. And what's the consequence of this? The consequence is that whether you're leftist or whether you're rightist or in between, no one believes a word the government says or does anymore. And that's why you see people in the streets, because there's no confidence that we have a government. This country is living on borrowed time. We built up a lot of wealth, but that wealth is being dissipated thanks to the communist Chinese. And by the way, I have a new client, Judy Mikovits, you can check her out, who worked with Fauci. Did you know that we actually sent the coronavirus over to the Wuhan lab in China to do research, because to do it here would have been illegal? And then Obama appropriated $3.7 million to the Chinese to do it, and they turned it into a bioweapon and released it either accidentally or by design, which has now destroyed this country and the entire world economically and harmed a lot of people health-wise. This is our government, the same government who gave anthrax, and that was Bush the dad with Rumsfeld and Cheney, to Saddam Hussein, which got out after 9/11, which killed a number of Americans, including some of my clients at the main post office in Washington, D.C., African Americans. This is our government. I'll be right back with the second segment with more horror stories from our government.
Fearless.
Disclaimer, he's crazy, he's racist, he's out to kill the Democrats.
Dangerous.
You don't care, he uses the court and the law.
Lethal.
This is bad.
Special prosecutor
Very bad.
Larry Klayman.
If you'd like to support Freedom Watch and this radio show, go to freedomwatchusa.org.
What is the consequence, fellow patriots, of the American people not believing a word the government says anymore? It was Ronald Reagan who said the scariest words in the English language are, "Hi, I'm here from the government and I'm here to help you." Well, we don't even take any pretense anymore that they're here to help us. They're not here to help us. Okay, they're here to help themselves. More cash stuffed into their pockets, more power, more reelection, walking around Capitol Hill with $5,000, Cavalli suits and gold cufflinks and everything else. I mean, these people make a modest salary. You have to wonder where all this money is coming from. Let them parade around like peacocks. We probably can get an understanding of how that happens. But the consequence is that the country's being pulled apart at the seams. Now, we're currently going through an occupation in Seattle. That's going to spread, and it's going to get endemic. It's going to become a pandemic, because any excuse for the left, of course, is starting this revolution, okay, because they want to destroy the country. They want to destroy the vision of our founding fathers. They want to take us back to a Soviet-style state. They're waging, in effect, a modern Bolshevik revolution. And it's not just the coronavirus that got people stirred up, but they were laying in wait. They were waiting for something to happen, as happened with George Floyd in Minneapolis, as happened with the individual in Atlanta, I forget his name, that was recently killed by the Atlanta police officer. They were just laying in wait. And they're being financed by people like George Soros. Probably money's coming in from Russia, from communist China, from Iran, from North Korea, and other places. And this, make no mistake about it, they want to destroy us. Now, the reality is that there's going to come a point in time. Now, Tucker Carlson said this. I don't care for Tucker Carlson. He's run interference for Roger Stone. They've effectively defamed my client, Jerry Corsi. Tucker Carlson isn't really even a conservative. Remember when CNN's Crossfire, he used to criticize me for bringing cases against the Clintons. When he's with MSNBC or CNN, he's one way. When he's with Fox, he's another way. He knows how to position himself. But you know what? He gave a good monologue the other day. I actually sent him an email, congratulated him, even though I told him he's going to get a subpoena in the Corsi case, because he said the right thing. He actually talked candidly. And what he said is that there's going to come a point in time when these hordes of radicals are going to be in front of your house, demanding the keys to your house, the keys to your car, taking everything you own, and this is the mentality. I got to tell you, as a young lawyer, I went to South Africa twice. I was uncomfortable seeing apartheid. I was there with an international trade law firm representing the South African steel industry. When I left and started my own firm, South African government came to me and said, Larry, we'd like you to handle the cases. I refused because I wouldn't want to be any part of helping them in any way. But I got to tell you something. We're going the way of South Africa right now, because what happened in that country was a huge retribution against the white population, those who didn't deserve it, and they had to turn over their house and their property and their farms without any compensation at all. That's what's going to happen. So the American people need to be prepared for this. We need to be able to defend ourselves. We want to be peaceful. We want to be legal. We don't want to start anything. We just want to be defensive. And that's what's so important about the Second Amendment, which the left is trying to take away from us as well. And that's what's important, because in the Second Amendment is a provision that it's legal to commission militias. Militias are not a dirty word, okay? And the American people, as long as they act peacefully, the American people, and in self-defense, the American people need to start preparing, because our government is not protecting us. Trump is sitting and looking at what happens in Seattle. He isn't doing squat. And I love the president, but you got to be critical here. And this is going to spread. So I would suggest that you get prepared for self-defense. And Tucker Carlson was absolutely right. He's lost all of his advertisers nearly, but at least he did the right thing in saying that. And I say it as well, is that we have to keep fighting. We'll do the best we can in the courts. We've got our citizens' grand juries at Freedom Watch that are going to be reconvened when this coronavirus calms down a little bit more. We've got cases against China, communist China, for the damage they did to this country here in Dallas, Texas, and in Jerusalem, Israel. We've got a criminal case in The Hague, Holland, to hold the leaders accountable. But you need to support Freedom Watch, because we're here for you. And we are your Justice Department. You have no Justice Department. And you need to support people like Laura Loomer, who, and I say this in my personal capacity, who are brave, who stick their neck out. I'll be right back with Laura Loomer, and you can hear from her herself.
And now, 4 words that make corrupt politicians make wee-wee in their little pants.
Transparency and the rule of law will be the touchstones of this presidency.
But we have to pass the bill so that you can find out what is in it.
Special Prosecutor Larry Klayman.
Be the one who makes our country great again. Go to freedomwatchusa.org and donate.
I'm back with Laura Loomer, my client, a friend, an American patriot, someone who's very brave. She's running for Congress in Palm Beach County, Florida. She's the one who uncovered initially the immigration fraud of Ilhan Omar. Of course, other people took credit for it, like Judicial Watch, as usual, I might add. But she is truly courageous. And we filed lawsuits. I filed them on her behalf in Florida with regard to the New York Daily News and Facebook. And there's some others that are pending as well, because she's been defamed. She's been destroyed. They call her every name under the sun. She's a female Jewish activist, and she has taken on radical Muslims and radical Islam, and the left just can't stand that. But I want to put something in context right now, because we know that on last Thursday, the so-called Supreme Court, I would call it the inferior court in many ways, thanks to Chief Justice John Roberts, who likes to play it both ways. He swings both ways, so to speak, actually and physically, and figuratively rather. He made a ruling that shot down President Trump's attempt to end DACA. And of course, years ago, representing Sheriff Joe Arpaio, along with 25 states' attorney generals, we got rulings from the Southern District of Texas and the Fifth Circuit that went all the way to the Supreme Court at that time. They were preliminary injunctions enjoining Obama's amnesty for 5 million illegal aliens, including the Dreamers. He wanted to get them all in as amnesty and not have them accountable to anything. We got that ruling. It eventually worked its way through the courts to the Supreme Court. And of course, yesterday, Roberts wrote the majority opinion, killing that decision and allowing all these illegal aliens to remain in the country. And in response to that, President Trump came out with a statement saying, well, you got to vote for me because I appoint really great judges. And I'm going to put forth a list of my Supreme Court nominees for real conservative justices before the election. Well, there's a problem with that. And the problem is that the president, however well-intentioned, has been taking the advice of establishment Republican hacks in Washington, D.C., like the Federalist Society and other special interests. And the judges that he has appointed to the bench are nearly as bad as the Obama and Clinton judges. They have no courage. They run from the exits. And in fact, Laura, unfortunately, got a couple of them down there in South Florida, Judge Roy Altman and Judge Rodney Smith. Altman dismissed the case before the other side even had a chance to respond. The New York Daily News claiming that because New York Daily News is an LLC and some of its owners may be from Florida, that there may be no diversity. But he never gave actually a chance to find out one way or the other. He just got rid of the case because Laura, like me, is a hot potato in his courtroom because we actually do things. And then Rodney Smith wound up transferring the Facebook case after sitting on it for a year to the Northern District of California. Of course, that's the home of Facebook, ultra-leftist San Francisco court. And I've had many other experiences with judges that I talked to in the first segment of this radio show, the Trump judges. Frankly, I haven't found one yet who's any good. Maybe there's one down in Alabama that we had recently with regard to Judge Roy Moore. I'm holding out hope. But of the 7 that I've had, they're absolutely terrible, and they are scared of their shadow. They're like Puxatawny Phil, the groundhog from Pennsylvania that runs back in its hole nearly every February 2nd. So anyway, I want to bring Laura on to talk about, what's happened to her, how they defame her, how they vilify her, how she's been knocked off of Facebook and the other social media. And of course, there's our case in Washington, D.C., and that was a Trump appointee too, Trevor McFadden, where we brought a class action against Google, YouTube, Facebook, Apple, Twitter, Instagram, the whole lot of them, for restraint of trade and discriminating against conservatives like Laura and, of course, like yours truly and Freedom Watch. And as Trevor McFadden said, he didn't think it was plausible and he dismissed it. At the same time that the Antitrust Division, my alma mater at the Justice Department, is investigating antitrust violations, at the same time everybody else is talking about it as well. The matter is now up on appeal. We're down, but we're not out. But this is what we're up against. So when President says and starts bragging, I'm going to put forward a list of really conservative Supreme Court justices, look out, because that list is going to be establishment Republican hacks that are afraid of their shadow, that will not stand up for the American people. And without judges who will come to our defense, we are left defenseless against the tyranny of the other 2 branches of government and against groups like Antifa. Laura, tell us about what's been happening to you. Tell us about your congressional campaign. I personally endorse you. I can as head of Freedom Watch, as a public interest group, but I wholly endorse you because we need courageous people like Laura Loomer in Congress, even if she's just a voice, even if she's outnumbered up there by a bunch of leftist ideologues. We need people like Laura. Tell us what happened to you in terms of all the defamation that has been leveled against you and the persecution because you stuck your neck out and tried to come to the defense of the American people.
Yeah, well, thank you, Larry. And so as a result of, being a hard-hitting investigative journalist and exposing the truth and, being ahead of the curve when it comes to, many issues, particularly with regards to big tech tyranny and also the story of Ilhan Omar marrying her brother and all of her immigration fraud and anti-Semitism, I have been punished by being deplatformed and viciously targeted by the radical left and their cohorts in Silicon Valley. And so I am the most censored person in this country, banned on every single social media site. And, I filed litigation against Google, Facebook, Twitter, and Apple, and I've even sued the Council on American Islamic Relations for their role in lobbying Twitter to ban me. But as you said, due to a lot of judicial corruption and just the fact that a lot of these judges don't want to have controversy in their courtrooms, I have not really been given a fair trial. And some of these judges have just unethically and I would say even unconstitutionally tossed my cases out of their courtroom without even, providing an explanation. And it just seems like we've been really given the runaround, with regards to when I'll be able to have my day in court. And if you look at the most recent case surrounding our antitrust lawsuit against Google, Facebook, Twitter, and Apple that was filed in the D.C. Circuit Court of Appeals, we were supposed to have our oral argument on the 15th of April. And due to COVID, it was canceled, and we were told that we would be able to reschedule and have an oral argument via telephone conference. And then that was denied to us. And then while we were in the process of waiting to hear back about our case, President Trump, of course, was censored by Twitter, and he took to Twitter to say, I'm going to take action against these companies. And the same day that he tweeted that he was going to take action, our case was dismissed. And so I don't believe in coincidences. And then, of course, shortly after that, you were targeted within the same D.C. Circuit Court of Appeals. There really doesn't seem to be much justice in this country. And it doesn't matter whether you have a Republican judge or a Democrat judge. They're all one and the same from my own experience.
Well, that's right. And that's why the president needs to get better advice. Now, at Freedom Watch, we have the Judicial Selection Strike Force, and we hope to give him names if he can find any, because there aren't many people that actually want to be judges who want to stick their neck out. And it's very hard to find them. And in fact, my favorite judge, Royce Lamberth, he recently bailed out of a case involving Sheriff Joe Arpaio, when he was defamed as a felon by not just CNN, but Rolling Stone and Huffington Post. And this is the problem. It was Jefferson, Laura, who said that federal judges were going to be the biggest problem with regard to the new Constitution in 1789. He opposed federal judges, the concept of them, because they're unelected. They're not accountable to the people, and they do what they want to do. And in this case, they're part of that Washington establishment. Everybody goes to the same receptions, the same parties. You're part of this giant club. You don't want to do anything against people that you work with or you see, or you'll be ostracized. And look at our Attorney General, our worthless, overstuffed Attorney General Bill Barr, who hasn't held one person accountable for anything. Zip, nada, nothing. And even the other day, Laura, I want to get your comments on this, when, the lunatics, the radical left was burning down a church across from the White House, St. John's Episcopalian Church, and nearly burned it to the ground. Trump went out there after that with some people from the military just to surveil what was going on and to speak to the American people. And Barr disavowed anything to have to do with that with his own president. And this tells you what you're up against. It's simply unbelievable. And the American people are fed up at our government. They're a bunch of clowns. They're court jesters. They're worse than that. They're a bunch of crooks that are stuffing money into their pocket, acquiring power. And I'm talking about both Democrats and Republicans, as this country literally burns. The barbarians are not even at the gates. They're inside the gates right now. I was out in California a couple of weeks ago, down in Los Angeles. I went through Beverly Hills, Rodeo Drive. 2/3 were destroyed of the stores in Beverly Drive, on Rodeo Drive. And that's just one area in this United States. Seattle continues to be occupied by the ultra-left, by Antifa, and by others. And the president's not stepping in. He's not doing anything about it. It's going to cost him in the election unless he gets real here and exercises his authority, which he's entitled to do. So I love the president. I know you do too. But this is tough love. He's got to snap out of it. And the judges that he appoints are the absolute worst. I mean, it's just unreal.
I'm not too satisfied with a lot of the judges, of course, and we've been experiencing it in our own situation. And now, just as I predicted, this issue of big tech social media censorship and big tech tyranny has really become the most important campaign issue. They're censoring the president of the United States. And, I just want to know why our elected officials waited until a presidential election year to address this issue. We've had the evidence for the last several years, and these people could have been prosecuted in big tech, and we could have had some real hearings and actually done something about it, but nothing was done.
Well, that's right. And you hear people, bloviating, as O'Reilly used to say, just shooting off their mouth. If you listen to Ted Cruz, 90% of what he says I agree with. You know what? But he doesn't do anything, Laura. Neither does Lindsey Graham. Neither does anybody else up there. They don't do anything about it. It's just talk. And, it's time that action is taken. Now, you're not going to have any legislation coming out of Congress to correct the situation. I don't care what the Republicans are telling you. It's going to take a Justice Department under the Attorney General to bring antitrust cases, to break up Google, YouTube, and the rest, to create competition and to restrain them from competing unfairly and restraining trade and attempting to monopolize by excluding conservative, libertarian, and people of faith voices. This is very important because you see how the people in this country have been brainwashed. I mean, look, these people in the streets, they don't, in many ways, they've been indoctrinated almost from birth into this leftist garbage, okay? We're turning into a socialist, communist state. And you can see that. We're in effect in a Bolshevik revolution right now, a modern day Bolshevik revolution. And I'm frightened that forces on the extreme right, and I wouldn't even call them the right, the Klan, people posing as militias, which they're not. Militias are perfectly proper. They're legal under the Second Amendment. But people, try to hide themselves as that unfairly and tar militias. And others are going to be out there taking matters into their own hands. And we're going to have a full-fledged bloody revolution. I'm trying to prevent that. But that's, in fact, what's going to happen unless the president takes control right now. And he has the authority to order the police to do it, peacefully and legally. And he should be doing that. I know in Florida, things are getting pretty tense, too. What's it like down there?
Well, I'd say we already have an insurrection in this country, and clearly, we have riots all across the nation, and even here in the district where I'm running for Congress. You've had violent Antifa rioters and BLM setting.
Laura, we're out of time. I want to thank you for coming on. Where can people reach you with your campaign?
LauraLoomerForCongress.com, and that's where you can sign up and receive emails and updates and even make a donation.
Thank you, Laura. God bless what you do for this country.
Before he was a trial lawyer, he sliced him and diced him.
People used to ask me, Larry, what caused you to start Judicial Watch and now Freedom Watch, given the powerful forces in this country that put you at risk?
In a meat packing plant.
I'm the son of meat packers in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. I know how to slice and dice.
A very special prosecutor, Larry Klayman.
If you'd like to support Freedom Watch and this radio show, go to freedomwatchusa.org.
The verdict, fellow patriots, friends, supporters, we're in the deep poop. Look around. We have a beautiful country. We're celebrating Father's Day this weekend. We celebrate Mother's Day. We celebrate Independence Day on July 4th. Up to now, we've had a lot to be thankful for. But we are at risk of losing it all because these radical leftists want to destroy our country. And frankly, our Justice Department and even the President of the United States is doing nothing about it. And consequently, peacefully and legally, we have to take matters into our own hands, peacefully and legally. And that's why we need to defend ourselves. We need to assert our Second Amendment rights. We need to be prepared not to start violence, but to be prepared if people use it against us, because they will be in front of your house in short order if this continues. And it doesn't matter what the reason is. And you know who I blame most? In this particular instance, We've got this thing about racism. Let's tear down all the Confederate statues. Let's tear down Christopher Columbus because he wasn't nice to American Indians. Let's destroy our entire culture. But the people that are most to blame here are not even these radical leftists, these atheists, these radical Muslims, the Jewish left. I'm Jewish myself, but I'm very critical. I'm Jewish Christian, but the Jewish left is very destructive of the Jewish people. They're doing the same thing in Israel. You've got radical blacks, you've got radical feminists, you've got radicals of everything, okay? But when you don't push back in a peaceful and legal way, and you run for the exits, and white people in particular, just call them a racist, and they run for the exits. They put their head in the sand, like Puxatani Phil, back in the hole, including our Attorney General. When you do that, you encourage more of it. And that's what we're going to have. And that's why you need to support Freedom Watch, because we are sticking our neck out. I've always stuck. Larry Klayman has always stuck his neck out. I've got people coming at me, bar associations and this and that, because they don't like the way I practice law. That's been said to me by the DC Bar Disciplinary Council, all of whom give to Democrats like Obama and Clinton. They're flaming leftists. Okay, but you know what? If I have to, I'll go down in flames. And I'm not going to go down in flames, believe me, because these people are cowards. And as we push back, they'll run for the exits. And that's what we need to do, peacefully and legally. So join Freedom Watch, join our Justice League, support our citizens' grand juries. We will be holding the Comeys, the McCabe's, the Brennans, the Clappers, the Clintons, the Obamas accountable. We will indict them. We've already indicted Mueller. We're going to try him in the next several months for the crimes that he committed against the American people with his phony witch hunts. And you need to support something like that. It was Wyatt Earp who frankly had to take the law into his own hands because he didn't have a Justice Department in those days. We don't have a Justice Department now. So this is what we need to do. And I always say peacefully and legally. We don't want to start anything, and we just want to use whatever means we have to effect protection of our free republic. And then, of course, there are cases against the Chinese for making them pay. You know what? And I'm amending the complaint to also include people like Fauci and others who gave them that virus. And for whatever reason, he gave them that virus, just like Bush the dad, Cheney and Rumsfeld gave Saddam Hussein anthrax, which wound up being used against us. It is frightening who is running our government. We have no government. It's the government not by and for the people. It's the government for themselves, enriching themselves. And this is where left and right have a lot in common, because we both see this. And that's what's causing, all of the panic, and it's what's causing the pandemonium. The government's been telling us, listen to my client, Judy Mikovits, that we have to wear masks, that we have to social distance. You know what this is doing? It's preventing us from developing the immunity to fend off the coronavirus. And Judy believes that the vaccines will actually be more deadly than the virus itself. And many other people believe that as well. So, take that with a grain of salt when the president tells you we're going to have a vaccine. I wouldn't recommend taking that vaccine until we know it's safe. And that's going to be a very long time from now. But the question is, can you believe the government? So I want you to join freedomwatchusa.org. Believe yourselves. Believe in God. God is with us, and we will prevail. But get up off the couch, put the popcorn and Coke down, and get to work. God bless you. God bless your family. God save America. I'll be back next week with another edition of Special Prosecutor with Larry Klayman. Until then, thank you for listening to me.